My journey down the River Spey from source to sea continues towards the coast.
The Spey widens as it flows north to the Moray Firth, meandering through a fertile land of woods and fields, towns and villages that all depend on the river.
Scotland's rivers have shaped the nation and are among the country's greatest treasures. Since the earliest times, rivers have been used as natural highways. Along their banks, the first towns and cities were built, and as a natural resource, rivers have provided us with an abundance of food and power. In this series, I'll meet a cast of characters who live along the banks of our great waterways. Uncovering intriguing tales from the past, I travel across Scotland on a grand tour to explore the original waters of life. On this grand tour, I take to the water.
It is so beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful any season as well.
Enjoy a taste of Speyside.
Sláinte.
Cheers.
Search for hidden treasures.
This is the largest population of freshwater pearl mussels left in the whole of the UK.
As I continue down the bountiful River Spey. This programme explores the lower reaches of the Spey. It's a route famous for its forests, whisky distilleries and salmon as it flows north towards the coast. Sweeping up from the banks of the Spey are two of Scotland's most renowned native forests, Rothiemurchus and Abernethy. Together they form the green heart of the Cairngorm National Park.
The Scots pine is the iconic tree species here, and a special woodland that's home to a host of native wildlife.
Red squirrels, ospreys, pine marten and deer are among the diverse range of animals that thrive in this wonderful environment. Lying in the heart of the forest is a mysterious and beautiful loch, An Lochan Uania, which translates from Gaelic as the Green Lochan. A place that, local legend claims, is the haunt of fairies and wild swimmers.
Lochan Uania is a superb location, and it really is green. Almost magically so, enticingly so, and I'm tempted to go in for a wee dip.
According to local legend, the water is green because the fairies do their clothes washing here. This seems a poor and somewhat unhygienic explanation if you ask me. Not that I don't believe in fairies, but to dye the loch would take an industrial quantity of their green laundry.
And you would have thought that by now that science would have come up with a credible answer. But having spoken to several geologists I know, including my brother, no one has come up with a definitive answer as to why the loch is so green. Minerals in suspension have been mentioned, algae, and even copper. So who knows? But one thing is for sure, it does look very chilly. There's also a rather chilly wind beginning to blow.
I strip as close as I dare to being naked in the icy air and test the waters, which just a few weeks ago was still frozen over.
Whoa, this is pretty chilly.
The water is cold enough to stop your heart.
Into Lochan Uania. Oh, it's freezing. I wouldn't recommend this. Oh, that's enough for me. Oh, it's like an electric current going through your body. It's so cold.
Having only just survived the ice-cold waters of An Lochan Uania, I continue on my journey to Abernethy Forest, a magnificent relic of the Caledonian forest, which once covered great swathes of Scotland. Today, this amazing survivor is just a fragment of what the once was.
The forest is rightly famous for its wildlife, but there's a surprisingly long and often forgotten human history that needs to be told.
To learn more, I'm meeting up with local expert Elspeth Grant.
This is Loch and Spirit, but back in the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries it was known as the Fishellich Dam.
The Fishellich Dam was part of a network of dams created to exploit the forest for its timber. These dams were used to hold water, which when released would transport logs from the forest down to the River Spey and on to Garmouth, where they were used in shipbuilding. Elspeth has an old map which illustrates what this area looked like at its industrial peak.
This is a map from 1858 showing this loch here as it was.
Yes. And it's called the dam there.
That's right. Yeah, and it shows the burn which was diverted into the loch and created this dam. And then there's the two outlets.
Oh, I see.
Where the sluice gates were.
To demonstrate how this watery system of export worked, Elspeth is going to take me on a mini grand tour of the forest. First stop is a deep trench that cuts through the trees.
Now, what's going on here? Got a work party.
Yes, they're helping to clear the channel, which was once a water lade that fed a holding dam that powered a sawmill at the Duick.
Carry on the good work, folks.
The water would travel about a mile down the Lade to a holding dam, where a sluice gate was used to control the flow of water to the sawmills. The mills were built to process the timber that would eventually travel down the River Spey. Emerging from the forest, we arrive at Nethy Bridge, close to where the River Nethy, which flows through the village, joins the Spey. Perhaps surprisingly, this picturesque community has an industrial past, all linked to the forest that surrounds the river.
So there was 4 or 5 sawmills at one time, but also a pipe boring mill, which actually produced wooden water pipes for London.
Really? But it is hard to imagine anyone being able to float logs down here at all.
Yes, so the timber was assembled into bigger rafts just at the mouth of the Nethy with the Spey, and then floated down in these bigger rafts the 40 miles or so to Garmouth.
Men would sit on top of these rafts and use long poles, known as cleeks, to help guide them to the shipbuilding yards at the mouth of the Spey. This was an extraordinary journey made by the timber, from Abernethy Forest to sailing the 7 seas. Leaving Nethy Bridge, I resume my journey along the River Spey. The story of the Spey logging industry may largely have been forgotten, but the rhythm of the river is famous throughout the world.
The word Strathspey not only conjures up the river and its many moods, but also the music and dance it inspired.
I join Paul Anderson, a renowned traditional fiddler and composer at Tulloch Gorham, a place which has inspired its very own Strathspey reel. I'm eager to learn more about how this style of music came to be.
Originally, Strathspeys were known as Strathspey reels. So the reel, which is kind of a very well-known dance, I mean, you find them in our place, you get them in Ireland, obviously, in England, but the oldest accounts of the reel are found in Scotland. Strathspey is very distinctly Scottish. So they would have been reels that began to pick up a very distinctive, strong rhythm. Would develop hand in hand, actually. I think the dance would develop and the music would go hand in hand with that. I think the dancer will respond to the musician.
And the Strathspey's got a distinctive sound as well. What is that sound?
I suppose the first thing I would probably look at would be what's known as the snap, or it was sometimes called snap bone, Scotch snap. And it's I'm not a singer, of course, but it's that feel like in Tullochgorum, day da dum day da da ba dum ba da dum day ba da ba da dum, that da dum.
It feels like a given that Strathspey music would be influenced by the mighty river it shares a name with.
I reckon you could easily get about 50 tunes that are inspired by the river or places nearby. I mean, Tullochgorum's one, Kirgelche Brig, but then there's tunes like the Music of Spey by James Scott Skinner. He lived at Aberlour for a wee while. He also wrote the Spey and Spate. Now that's a completely different aspect to that particular river. I think it's the fastest flowing river in British Isles, so you can imagine for it's in Spey, it's quite fearsome, so the music reflects that.
What about the future of the music?
I mean, I write Strathspeys myself because I like them. I love playing them, and I love trying my best to write a good Strathspey. But no, folks still write them. It will continue to develop and be part of our culture. As long as folk like traditional Scottish music and dance, Highland dancing or Scottish country dancing. Or
there's life yet in the Scotch slap.
Plenty of life yet.
After my brief musical interlude, I returned to the river, where the long-distance path, the Speyside Way, follows its course towards the town of Granton-on-Spey.
Granton was originally built as a Highland new town and was conceived by the big landowner in the area, the Oxford-educated Sir James Grant.
In 1765, Sir James returned from a continental grand tour. The young clan chief's head was full of improving ideas, and he announced the establishment of a new town to be named after him, Granton.
With its neat granite houses and elegant town square, Granton was considered to be a success story and earned for its founder the title the Good Sir James Grant.
Grant's drive to improve and modernise chimed with the Enlightenment principles of the day. Sir James hoped that his Granton would have a civilising effect on the unruly native Scottish Highlanders.
This fitted in quite neatly with the plans of the British government to suppress the barbarous population of the Highlands and to reduce the risk of further rebellion in North Britain.
Where the river flows, there is wealth and abundance, or so the good Sir James Grant fervently hoped when he sighted his new town on the banks of the Spey. And it's true, there is treasure to be found in the waters of the Spey, but you have to look very hard to find it. Not gold, but pearls.
Freshwater pearl mussels were once common in many British rivers, and some historians argue that the Roman invasion of Britain was actually triggered by Julius Caesar, who wanted to control the lucrative trade in pearls.
To learn more about this elusive and now legally protected mollusk, I've come down to the river to meet conservationist Peter Cosgrove.
At the moment, in 2021, this is the largest population of freshwater pearl mussels left in the whole of the UK.
Good heavens. And how come there's only one river that really has that level of population?
Well, literally since Roman times, the interest in freshwater pearl mussels has not been in their ecology and their importance in the ecology of rivers. It's been in the value of the pearls that they held. And so for over 2,000 years, they have been constantly and absolutely exploited without any thought or care for the sustainability of the stocks. And so there are hundreds of rivers across the UK that used to have pearl mussels in them, and they have just decreased across the whole of the UK.
Or just hunted to extinction.
Hunted to extinction in most situations.
Over the course of his work, Peter has been gifted freshwater pearls, which he's brought with him to illustrate why they've been so coveted.
That's amazing. Look, there's completely different colours. You've got blue ones, some are pearly white.
You can see the colours and the shapes. Some of them are your classic round
That's a
pearl.
real beauty.
That's a real beauty. But other ones are black or brown. These are basically the pearls that are in the Scottish and the British crown jewels.
It's hard to comprehend that this species has been decimated by the hunt for their pearls, and so their conservation is crucial.
It's critically important because I like to think of the fact that we hope that the Nepalese and the Indians look after tigers and the Kenyans look after rhinos and elephants. And we have so few species in this country that are of global importance, but this is one.
That's one of them.
And it's on our watch, which is why we have to do something about it.
Peter's conservation work includes gathering pearl mussel DNA. It's part of a project to re-establish the population throughout the river. Glass-bottom buckets are used to see beneath the surface as we go in search of the mussels.
We've got one here, look.
So you're using your stick to see if you can pluck him off, like using chopsticks.
Yeah, like that.
So there we are.
Freshwater
Pearl mussel from the Spey.
Yes.
Can I pick it up?
Yes.
So there he is. Rather unprepossessing fellow. And he's what? How old do you think?
Around about, I'd say about 50, possibly 60 years old, but certainly 50.
60. Right.
They get much bigger than that, at least twice that size.
So do you think that's a child of the 60s?
Yes, not the only one around here.
Wishing Peter every success in repopulating Scotland's rivers with amazing freshwater pearl mussels, I continue following the river.
Now, it's a little-known fact that Captain W.E. Johns, the author and creator of the all-British hero and flying ace Biggles, once sought solace and inspiration fly fishing on the River Spey.
The author of Biggles Flies North and Biggles Flies South rented Riverside Pitcroy Lodge with his mistress Doris for 6 years from 1947. But why choose Speyside?
John's marriage had collapsed and his wife refused to divorce him. So to escape damaging gossip about his extramarital affair, he escaped to Speyside with the love of his life, Doris Lee.
Pitcroy Lodge became their love nest, and the river a place where Johns could relax with his rod and dream up new adventures for his hero, Biggles. And what an inspiration the river proved to be. Moving on from tales of the great flying ace and his secret love life, I head downstream to Nocando, which is home to one of Speyside's many whisky distilleries. I'm intrigued to find out why the area has achieved such prominence, and distillery manager Sandy McIntyre is going to enlighten me.
Speyside is more or less where distilling started. It's where the illicit stills were in the hills round about the River Spey, synonymous with this very soft, light spirit that we get. And it's just continued to expand over the years. So it's been in the area for maybe about 150 to 200 years, distilling here in Speyside. So very important area to the whole of Scotch whisky.
Within a, 15-mile radius of where we are, you've got all these world-famous whisky names.
Yeah, very much so. We've got Macallan, we've got Cardew, we've got Glenlivet. You know, these real big, powerful houses that are producing great Scotch.
The Gaelic for whisky is Ushkobeha, which translates as the water of life. This leads me to believe that there must be a connection between the mighty river I'm following and the famous dram.
Well, there is. The water that we use for making our whisky is drawn from a natural spring. It was the same natural spring that was used 125 years ago underneath the distillery. That flows into the River Spey. We're gathering water from the hills that ultimately is making its way to the Spey. And all we're doing is stealing a wee bit of it and using it to make it something that everybody can enjoy globally rather than just the people locally.
So in a sense, the Spey is allowing you to take a little bit of its source for us to enjoy.
After all this talk of whisky, it feels only right to have one for the road. Or should I say river?
Let's have a wee look at a wee nose.
A nose?
Yeah, have a wee nose. You'll get Christmas cake there, you'll get some sultanas, you'll get some dates, perhaps even some dark chocolate.
It's definitely marzipan in there.
Definitely. Slanger?
Slanger. I feel privileged, I really do. drinking whisky so close to the source.
Oh, yes.
Beside the Spey
Exactly.
in Speyside.
Exactly. And the sun's shining as well. Cheers.
My spiritual moment with a glass of whisky is a short one, and it's back to the river, but not on foot. This time, I'm going to let the current take the strain. And expert river guide Dave Craig is showing me how to dip my paddle.
Since 2000, I've been doing this on a regular basis. I've probably done about 220 descents now, I think.
Have you got a favourite part of the Spey yourself?
Well, that's a hard question. I mean, it is so beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful at any season as well. I mean, I used to shy away from doing too many October trips, but October can be a lovely time as well, with the clarity of the air. But if you were to push me to say a particular area, then I do have a... The Cando estate is very beautiful.
Most of Scotland's major rivers flow through large conurbations. The Tay goes through Perth and Dundee, the Dee ends up in Aberdeen, and the Clyde splits Glasgow in two. But the mighty Spey is an exception to this rule.
The Spey, you've got this major water artery which ends up at this very remote location. So the Spey is unique in so many ways. It's beautiful, it's got fantastic wildlife, it's got 50 working distilleries along its banks. So I mean, that's the other thing that's unique about the Spey. But then it confluences at a very remote location.
Following the route of the floaters of yesteryear, we make our way towards the mouth of the river. The Spey seeps slowly and undramatically through mudbanks and marshy channels to join the Murray Firth. Nearing my journey's end, I make a quick stop on the left bank of the river at the village of Kingston-on-Spey. The village thrived on the shipbuilding industry here from the late 1700s until the turn of the last century.
It's very hard to imagine today all the noise and activity of the 7 boatyards that once lined the Spey here, producing ships of quite considerable size, made, of course, of pine logged on the slopes of the Cairngorms.
There's not much evidence of all the labour and enterprise that produced hundreds of ships here. Some weighing over 800 tons, with masts 60 feet tall. And to think some of these vessels would go on to make grand voyages across the globe, even travelling as far as Australia and Cape Town. Shipbuilding on the Spey wasn't the only casualty of changing times. The Spey is a jewel amongst some of Scotland's most famous salmon rivers, with thousands of salmon making the journey up the river every year. They enter here in Spey Bay, once known as Tugnet, a name that also describes the once bountiful industry that took place in these waters.
It was down on the shore here that fishermen in the past would pull or tug on their nets to land their catch, hence the name Tugnet. And the building complex over there is the relic of a once lucrative salmon and sea trout fishery.
This is the Tugnet Ice House. It was built by the Duke of Richmond and Gordon almost 200 years ago to store winter ice so that salmon could be kept fresh for export. The ice was made in winter by draining off river water into shallow ponds. When the ice froze, it was cut up and stored in the ice house.
Now, I'm guessing that winters back in the 19th century were much colder than they are now, and dependably so, to fill a room this size from floor to ceiling with ice.
To tell me about this almost forgotten way of life, I'm meeting up with a local man, Jim Gordon, the last of the salmon fishers.
I started here in 1965, the 11th of February 1965, when the fishing started then, until the 26th of August.
And what was your job then?
Well, I come here and you went to stingman. It was a new start. You were a stingman, you were the boy.
Each salmon station was organised into 2 cobbles. Each boat had 3 men, a man laying the net and 2 oarsmen. The skipper of the cobble was known as the kenner. The most junior member, the stingman, was responsible for safely grounding and securing the boat when it returned to the riverbank. To get a sense of what a day's work was like, Jim's going to talk me through an old home video.
That's them pulling up the boat. That's my nephew Ross on there, and that's my son going past there just now. And this is them setting off, and throwing off the leads, and then the corks.
How would they know when to set the net?
Well, it's no set. It's just as I see. It's just a sweep around in about 5 minutes. So that's them pulling them in.
A shot is what fishermen call the cast of the net. The goal of a shot was to cast the net around as large a part of the pool as possible. The crew would make many shots throughout their shift, some being more bountiful than others.
Quite a haul there.
The kenner then would shout, "Oh, she's boiling," and it was boiling like a kettle with a lot of fish in it, obviously. But there's quite a good shot.
An exciting sight to see that many salmon.
Exactly. That's your bonus.
Many men would learn their trade here at the mouth of the river before graduating to become gillies on estates further upstream, some even rubbing shoulders with royalty.
Prince Charles came quite often, and he stayed at the castle when he was at Gordonston School, and he fished quite often with most of the gillies, but he fished quite often with my father and the beat that he was on.
So that's your father?
Yeah. And that's him with Charles had 3 fish. I think he would have been about 15 at that time. Aye.
That's amazing.
Aye.
And Charles looks quite pleased with himself, does he not, Luke?
Aye, right, aye, he was. Aye.
What's that, a salmon and 2 grills?
Aye, yeah, it's a salmon and it's 2 grills. So that's my story.
The traditional industries that sustain the communities at the mouth of the Spey have disappeared. The shipyards have gone, and the salmon no longer come in great numbers. Today, Tugnet is a museum to these industries, which once depended on the bounty of the river. The Ice House is now also home to the Dolphin Centre, and if you're lucky, you might just catch a glimpse of a bottlenose dolphin from the beach.
Now, dolphins come into Spey Bay all year round, and in the springtime you might catch sight of them chasing salmon at the mouth of the river as they make their way upstream to their spawning grounds. Now that's a hopeful sign, surely, for the future health of this bountiful river, and the perfect place for me to end my grand tour of the River Spey.
On my next grand tour, I'll be travelling down the River Nith, River of Invention.